Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a look at a building you absolutely already know, the Colosseum. We've all seen that iconic silhouette, right? But the actual story behind how it was built, the hidden machinery underneath it, and why it's missing half its walls, it is literally mind-blowing. I'm really excited to get into the true architectural and political history of this stone titan, so let's just jump right in.
Okay, let's dive into this. Right off the bat, we've got to ask a pretty massive question. How on earth did a hated tyrant's private lake turn into the greatest arena in human history? Because, the Colosseum didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It was actually born from a huge disaster and some totally brilliant political maneuvering by a new emperor trying to wipe away the legacy of his really unpopular predecessor, Emperor Nero.
Section 1. From Lake to Roman Arena, the ultimate political propaganda.
We normally think of the Colosseum as just this ancient sports venue, right? But fundamentally, it was a massive tool of political propaganda, built right over the ashes of central Rome. Look at how fast this all happened. In 64 CE, the Great Fire of Rome clears out a huge chunk of the city, and Emperor Nero selfishly grabs it to build his massive golden palace. But skip ahead to 69 CE. Nero is out, and Emperor Vespasian takes over. He knows he needs to win back a really angry public. So in 72 CE, Vespasian actually drains Nero's private lake and starts building the Flavian Amphitheater, which is what we call the Colosseum today. And just 8 years later, in 80 CE, his son Titus inaugurates it. Talk about a quick turnaround.
This really shows you the absolute genius of Vespasian's strategy. There's just a stark contrast here. On one hand, you have Nero's Domus Aurea, the absolute pinnacle of private luxury, complete with an artificial lake and exclusive gardens meant for literally one guy. On the other hand, you have the Flavian Amphitheater. This was the ultimate public gift, free entry, seating for 50,000 citizens. Vespasian basically took this massive real estate back from a tyrant and handed it right back to the people. It was a total political masterstroke. Section 2. Engineering the Flavian Amphitheater, building a 50-meter-tall giant. To make this massive political dream a reality, the Romans had to push the absolute limits of ancient engineering. They were building a structure taller than the Statue of Liberty from base to torch. 240,000, that is the staggering number of cartloads of travertine stone they hauled from quarries 20 miles away. And that was just to build the exterior. It took an estimated 20,000 to 30,000 laborers, many of them slaves, sadly, working day and night to pull off this logistical miracle in under a decade. It's hard to even wrap your head around.
Now, you might be wondering, how do you actually support all that incredibly heavy stone on top of an unstable, drained lake bed? Well, the secret sauce here is Roman concrete. By taking limestone, heating it into quicklime, and mixing it with water and volcanic ash, they created this incredibly durable binding putty. This was a total game changer. It let them pour massive 12-meter-thick foundations and build those strong, airy, open-grown vaults inside the corridors that we're still marveling at today. And the thing is, they didn't just build it to be strong. They built it to look beautiful, too. If you look closely at the outside, you'll see the architects stack traditional Greek columns in a very specific way. Down at the bottom, you have the heavy, simple Doric order, representing masculine strength. Then, the middle level uses the more slender Ionic order. And finally, crowning the very top is the delicate Corinthian order, representing a maiden. This harmonious way of stacking them, it's a design rule that architects literally still echo all over the world today. Section 3. The crowd and the spectacle. Bread, circuses, and absolute control.
Okay, we've talked about the building itself, but let's talk about the people inside it. The Roman elite used these games not just for entertainment, but for absolute political and social dominance. The seating arrangement was literally a physical map of Rome's strict social hierarchy. You had the senators and nobles down on the bottom tier, right up close to the action. Knights and regular citizens were in the middle tiers, and the plebeians, freed slaves, and women, they were shoved all the way to the top tier, as far from the floor as possible. They even installed marble and iron dividers on the stairs to make absolutely sure the classes never mixed.
And think about this. Managing 50,000 rowdy people takes some serious logistics. The Colosseum actually featured 80 total entrances. 76 of those were numbered gates so the general public could find their seats super efficiently. Honestly, it's exactly how a modern sports stadium works today. The other 4 were unnumbered grand entrances. And that included a highly exclusive southern gate reserved strictly for the emperor and his imperial box. Once everyone was in their seats, the crowd was subjected to a very rigid, day-long schedule. The morning started with venations, which were exotic wild animal hunts. Then,
Midday transitioned to brutal public executions, which were often staged as twisted mythological plays. And then, finally, the afternoon brought the main event, gladiatorial combat between highly trained fighters following precise rules. This intense, grueling schedule was the ultimate bread and circuses strategy, designed to keep the population relentlessly entertained, fed, and completely submissive to Imperial rule. Section 4. The hidden underground machine, the hypogeum.
Now, what's really fascinating here is what happened beneath the floor. Added about a decade after the Colosseum first opened, this two-story subterranean complex was the literal engine room of the arena. The contrast between the two worlds is just staggering. Up above, spectators are in the sun, everything is orderly, and they're even shaded by a giant canvas awning called the Valerium, which actually took a dedicated team of 240 sailors to operate. But down below the wooden floor in the hypogeum, it was a nightmare. Pitch black, sweltering hot in the summer, freezing in the winter, and packed tightly with terrified wild beasts and sweating laborers working in horrific conditions to keep the show going.
And those exhausted laborers were tasked with operating 28 distinct manual lifts, or capstans. By pushing these heavy wooden beams round and round in circles, the workers hoisted cages all the way up to the ceiling of the tunnels. This let animals, set pieces, and even gladiators magically spring forth from hidden trapdoors right onto the sand above. For the ancient world, this was an astonishing theatrical effect.
Section 5. Earthquakes and Iron Scavengers, the dismantling of the arena.
All right, so we need to address the visual elephant in the room here. Why is half of the Colosseum missing today? A lot of people just kind of assume it crumbled from old age, but the truth is way more dramatic. It involves natural disasters and, honestly, a whole lot of human greed. Let's trace how it actually fell apart. By the 5th century, the Roman Empire was changing, and those extravagant, bloody games officially stopped. Fast forward to 1349 CE, and a massive earthquake hits Rome. It completely brings down the entire southern wall, which, if you remember, was built on that unstable, drained lake sediment. Once all that stone fell, the site essentially became a massive free quarry. Seriously, in just 1 year, 1452 CE, a single contractor hauled away 2,500 cartloads of fallen travertine to go build Renaissance palaces and churches. But the ruins didn't just sit there empty. Over the centuries, the Colosseum lived some truly bizarre second lives. At one point, it was walled off as a fortified medieval palace. Later on, its vaulted corridors were stuffed with housing and squatter settlements. It even housed lime kilns, where scavengers literally burned the ancient marble seating to make mortar. And get this, by the 16th century, it was so overgrown with rare plants that it became a dedicated botanical study area. Wild, right? And here's a detail that absolutely blows my mind. If you've ever looked closely at the surviving walls, you've probably noticed they're covered in holes. Those pockmarks aren't from World War II bullets or ancient cannons. No, they are holes painstakingly chiseled by medieval iron hunters. These scavengers spent years digging into the stone just to extract the heavy iron clamps that held the blocks together. They'd melt them down to make horseshoes, tools, weapons, whatever they needed. And all of that leaves us with the weirdly asymmetric structure we see today. The south side, built on the soft lake bed, collapsed in the quake and got relentlessly scavenged. But the north side survived almost perfectly intact. Why? Because the Vatican deliberately stepped in to protect it. Various popes used the northern face as this majestic, monumental backdrop for their religious processions between the Lateran Palace and the Vatican. That intervention literally saved half the building from being completely erased. Which brings us to a really beautiful realization, and it's captured perfectly in this quote. The Colosseum has survived not because it is made of stone, but because it is made of history. It is not ancient, it is eternal. Despite the earthquakes, the intense looting, and the honestly brutal purpose it was originally built for, the legacy of this stone titan simply refused to die. So I want to leave you with this final thought today. If a building's survival depends on both the sheer brilliance of its engineering and the heavy weight of its history, which of our modern structures do you think will still be standing 2 millennia from now? Think about it. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking questions, and I'll catch you next time.